Hi guys, so this is the second part of journalism and the First Amendment notes. If you remember, quick review, you should remember the First Amendment and remember the little wrap that goes with it. Religion, assembly, press, petition, speech. That's the best way to remember them, wraps. So, speaking about speech and expression, there's 9 forms of unprotected speech. Obscenity, defamation, which is when you injure somebody's reputation, and that could be verbally or written. Number 3, expression intended and likely to incite imminent lawless action, like you can't say bomb on an airplane. Fighting words, so you're going to cause a disturbance and get into a fight and hurt somebody. Unwarranted invasions of privacy, so that goes along with one of the later amendments. Deceptive or misleading advertisements are those for illegal products or services. So when they're advertisement, they're lying to you about what a diet pill can actually do. They can be sued. Clear and immediate threats to national security. That again would be somebody threatening our country, the president. Copyright violations, which is plagiarism, in any form, whether it's music or writing, art, there are copyright violations. And expression on school grounds that causes a material and substantial disruption of school activities. So this is where your freedom of speech comes in. So if you want to protest, but it causes such a disruption to the school that people can't learn, then you can be suspended or get into trouble. So, but schools need to prove that. And they need to prove that about a publication you're writing for as well with press, any event that you're having. Like when we used to have the Kingsway Live. We used to have Mr. Kingsway, now it's Kingsway Live. So that's what that one talks about. Okay, and now here we are with freedom of the press. And I'm going to get rid of my face here. So, important vocabulary to know for freedom of the press. As a member of the press, some people, even our school administrators, will try to use prior restraint. So that means they will stop your speech, especially in publication, before the expression actually takes place. They're really not legally allowed to do that, but they technically, it depends on the situation, they can if they get word of something and they're acting like your parent. So that's a touchy area. Shield laws. So not necessarily a journalist for school, but if you're a journalist for a national publication, there are laws that give journalists the ability to protect the identities of confidential sources without fear of prosecution. So a journalist can go to jail for protecting, let's say somebody's speaking out about some injustice as a whistleblower. The journalist can be called into court and forced to give the name if it's a harmful situation. If somebody in power is going to be harmed, then the journalists have to give the name. But as long as it's not harming anybody, journalists do not have to give the name. They are protected. Ethics. We talked about that already. Those are those 5 values. Accuracy, independence, accountability, humanity, and impartiality. Okay, censorship, we've talked a little bit about that. And copyright laws, the legal right granted to an author, composer, playwright, etc. So this is all involved with freedom of the press. Okay, some other things you need to know. So libel, the press cannot commit libel. They cannot print false things. They have to print a correction if there is a problem. So it's anything in writing that damages a person's reputation. Slander is verbal, it's said, libel's in writing. Editorializing, you cannot do this in the press. You cannot express an opinion in a factual article, that's called editorializing, and you have to kind of leave yourself out of it. Defamation, I already had up there, taking or harming someone's reputation. Intrusion, uninvited entry, infringement upon the act of intruding, infringing on others. So with what you say, or if a journalist is going onto someone's private property to interview them, they could be accused of intrusion or infringement. Subjectivity, you have to be subjective. You shouldn't be subjective, I'm sorry. Objective is when you base things on facts and you try to see it from all eyes. Subjective is when you can only see it through your eyes. Okay, you already had the term fourth estate. That is the name given to the press. They don't want to be connected to the government, so they're not considered a governmental branch. They want to oversee what the government is doing and protect the people. Okay, you know what an opinion is. Features, I touched on a little bit. These are more about social issues. There's special articles that take a lot of research. And then news is the facts. You cannot add a lot of opinion. You can't really add opinion in news articles. Okay, brief history of freedom of the press. So the United States seems to be the elite leader of press freedom due to the First Amendment protection afforded to it. So we have more freedom for our journalists than in other countries. In other countries, they can be shot or killed or just disappear. It is the watchdog. We already said that. It's called the Fourth Estate. Okay, they cover invasion of privacy, free expression, access to government information, prior restraint, commercial speech, libel, slander, and it began during the American Revolution. Okay, there are two important cases for high school students. The first is Tinker versus Des Moines. Students wore armbands to protest the Vietnam War, and it was found that it was very legal for them to do this. The school was not allowed to suppress this right to protest the war, but initially they were suspended and sent home for doing this, but the school could not prove that there was a substantial disruption because all they were doing was wearing the bands. Nobody was arguing about it. So they won the case. And that gave schools more rights and students more freedoms to express themselves. There's actually a Tinker mobile that goes around. Tinker's still alive. She's a girl student. And they drive around the country fighting for student press rights. Hazelwood versus Kohlmeyer is the one who kind of took student rights away. And you guys are going to be looking at these in groups. The student's school paper was censored because of an article about divorce, in which parents of students in school were named and criticized. The students went to court over the issue, and the school's decision was found legal. So they basically, you're going to read more about this, but Hazelwood kind of tied the hands of yearbook advisors, newspaper advisors. It kind of hurt students as far as free speech, and you'll be looking that one up. Okay, underground newspapers. Yes, you could have one. They're not sponsored by the school, so an adult from the school cannot help you. You do have the right to distribute them on school grounds during the day. However, officials may determine reasonable times and places for the distribution, and they can punish you if it's printing untruths or it's causing a problem in the school. So they cannot censor them, but they can punish you after the fact. Right. Number of courts have ruled that underground publications are not subject to prior review. We have prior review at Kingsway. So administration has the right to review any school publication before it's printed and ask us to make changes. So that is actually in our board policy. It's actually better if schools don't interfere, because when they interfere, they can take on the lawsuit. But if they gave students and their advisors more freedoms, then the advisor and the students can get sued and not necessarily the school. The school's not going to take as much responsibility. But at Kingsway, they do oversee the paper, they oversee the yearbook, the student, anything student government does, they oversee it. They have to have prior review. They see it prior to any publication. Okay. And it just talks about if students base their decisions on ethical standards, school officials will trust them more and possibly not have prior review. I have found this to be true. But whenever it's an opinion piece or a controversial issue, I am always asked to share ahead of time. I don't know what that is. Okay, Open Meetings Act. So you guys can go to board meetings and cover what they're doing. You can go to a township meeting. You also can have records as long as it's not personal information about students. You are allowed to ask the school for a record of how many students did you suspend this year and what were their genders and ethnicities. You can find that information out. They might stall you and say, okay, we don't have it right now. Why don't you write a letter asking us for it so they can stall and not give it to you right away. But legally, they have to provide any public information, any records that the school has, as long as the student's name isn't in it and it's generic, they can tell you. Okay, and they should. And that's pretty much it on the First Amendment. So that's it for the First Amendment. The quiz is going to be sometime next week. It will be online. I'm probably thinking more toward the end of the week on a Thursday after we have Weird News Wednesday. We'll probably do like some kind of Kahoot live as a review if I can with you after the students present the weird news. So I'm thinking next Thursday. And good luck with this. Sorry I was kind of tired tonight doing this, and I hope it comes off well. I will give you a hard copy of these notes as well as this ed puzzle and video. Bye-bye.